She is taking some heat. Why would you choose or agree to do this season? Of all seasons, this is hardly what I would refer to as Nick Saban kind of focus. Bill Belichick kind of focus. Back in the day when baseball managing still meant something.
That's the question Indiana Fever fans are asking right now. And it's not coming from casual observers. It's coming from people who've watched this team transform from lottery pick to playoff contender in a single season. Because while the rest of the WNBA is scrambling through the most chaotic offseason in league history, their head coach just committed to calling college basketball games for ESPN during March Madness.
The other thing we're going to look at is Stephanie White. My goodness, all the Stephanie White truthers will be out in full throat, okay? Oh, but look at what she did last year. How about I don't want to be bored? Is it okay to say that? Is it okay to say I want to watch basketball and be entertained by said brand of basketball, of style of basketball?
Here's what makes this timing so problematic. The new CBA ratification pushed everything into a compressed timeline that's never happened before. Free agency, which is normally wrapped up by February, is now bleeding into April. The expansion draft for Golden State and Toronto is happening in April. Training camp starts in April, and Stephanie White will be in Columbia, South Carolina, calling first and second round NCAA tournament games instead of being in Indianapolis building her roster. The Fever currently have exactly 3 players under contract for next season. 3. Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Lexi Hull. Everyone else is either a free agent, a restricted free agent, or potentially exposed in the expansion draft.
So, I'm going to tell you, most years I wouldn't have a problem with this. But this year, you better believe I do. Because I have to wonder, because of the CBA chaos, why would you possibly do this? Why would you make a decision to get involved with something that's going to take your attention away from your WNBA team that you are coaching when all kinds of chaos, nothing but chaos, is going to take place in April, and you play games in April, by the way.
Let's put this in perspective. Kelsey Mitchell, who averaged 19.2 points per game last season and was arguably the second most important player on that team, is an unrestricted free agent. Erica Wheeler, their veteran point guard who mentored Clark through her rookie season, is a free agent. Nalissa Smith, the 2022 number 2 overall pick, could be exposed in the expansion draft depending on who they protect. These aren't minor roster decisions. These are franchise-altering choices that require constant communication, negotiation, and strategic planning. And they're all happening in April, while White is working ESPN broadcasts.
Most years, you wouldn't have an expansion draft. But not this year. You've got chaos. So right here, Stephanie White has worked as a college basketball analyst with ESPN since 2007. She recently called her first NBA game as a color commentator. My God. Working a January contest between the Raptors and the Magic.
White has been calling college games for ESPN since 2007. She recently added NBA games to her resume, working a Raptors Magic contest in January. Most years, this wouldn't raise an eyebrow. Coaches have side gigs, they do media work in the offseason. It's part of the business, especially in a league where even head coaches aren't making NBA money. But this isn't most years. This is the year where the entire league structure got flipped upside down by a new collective bargaining agreement that nobody saw coming. The year where 2 expansion teams are entering the league, the year where salary caps are jumping dramatically, and the entire financial ecosystem of the WNBA is being rebuilt from scratch.
These players, NC2A players that are actually playing, and potential free agents. How are you not knee-deep in a room somewhere watching nothing but tape right now? Or how about watching your own dynamic playmaker, Caitlin Clark, and some of her film to find out what you really need to do to adjust your offense to make it fit her as a player. But no, you're going to be gone calling ESPN basketball games. I got to tell you.
Think about what needs to happen between now and May 9th. When the Fever open their season against the Dallas Wings, White needs to evaluate every available free agent in the league. She needs to watch film on overseas players who might be coming back to the WNBA. She needs to study tape from the college players who just declared for the draft. She needs to coordinate with her front office on protection lists for the expansion draft. She needs to negotiate with agents about contract terms under a brand new CBA that nobody fully understands yet. And perhaps most importantly, she needs to be studying film of Caitlin Clark. Not just highlight packages, deep film study. Understanding her tendencies, her preferences, the plays where she thrives and the plays where she struggles. Because the biggest criticism of Christie Sides last season was that the offense never fully adapted to maximize Clark's unique skill set.
One could argue if they failed to win at all. Let us remember this day when Stephanie White decided something was more important than the Indiana Fever. Oh, but Rhodes, you're blowing this out of am I? Or do I just expect something a little bit more out of somebody that's got a team than what I'm seeing right now? I don't know. I don't like it at all. And I got the right to say I don't like it at all. We'll see how this plays out.
White's first season with the Fever was successful by any reasonable measure. They went from 13-27 under Sides to making the playoffs and pushing the Connecticut Sun to a deciding game in the first round. But here's what gets lost in that narrative. Kelsey Mitchell had the best season of her career, shooting 46% from the field and 41% from three. The defensive improvements that everyone credited to White were also heavily influenced by having a healthy Aaliyah Boston for a full season. And Clark? She spent significant stretches playing off-ball in a system that didn't always utilize her playmaking ability. There were games where she'd bring the ball up, immediately hand it off, and then run to a corner. That's not maximizing a generational talent. That's fitting her into a pre-existing system instead of building the system around her.
This is interesting. We all know that the Epic triggered, the Epic provision to contracts were triggered, right? And we also know there's just a standard raise that's going to come with the CBA. So let's take a look at this since they came in the league at the same time. Now heading into 2026, both players are staring at a payday that finally reflects their market. Under the previous 2020 CBA, we all know it was basically $78,000, and then Angel Reese was $73,000. We're talking about in 2024, $74,909 in 2025. After months of negotiations, the WNBA and its players...
So when you see White heading to South Carolina to call NCAA Pastor Tournament games, the question isn't whether she's allowed to do it. Of course she is. The question is whether it demonstrates the kind of singular focus that championship organizations demand from their head coaches. Nick Saban didn't do TV work during Alabama's dynasty years. Bill Belichick wasn't moonlighting as a broadcaster during the Patriots' run. Joe Torre wasn't calling playoff games for other teams while managing the Yankees. When you're building something special, when you have a generational talent and a limited window to maximize that talent, everything else becomes secondary. The Indiana Fever aren't just trying to make the playoffs next season. They're trying to build a championship contender around the biggest star the WNBA has seen in decades. Clark's rookie contract runs through 2028, but her prime years are happening right now. Every season matters. Every roster decision matters. Every minute spent preparing matters. And right now, during the most critical roster construction period in franchise history, their head coach is going to be splitting her attention between building a championship team and calling college basketball games for ESPN. That's not a fireable offense, but it's absolutely something that should be remembered if this team underperforms next season. Because when you have Caitlin Clark on your roster, when you have a player who can sell out arenas and generate ratings that rival NBA games, when you have someone who can transform your franchise from irrelevant to must-watch television, you don't get to treat the job like it's just another coaching gig. You have to be all in. You have to be obsessed. You have to be willing to sacrifice everything else for the chance to build something special. The expansion draft is April 4th. Free agency opens shortly after. Training camp starts in mid-April. The season begins May 9th. And somewhere in that compressed timeline, Stephanie White will be in Columbia calling first and second round NCAA Pass tournament games instead of being locked in a film room in Indianapolis. If the Fever fail to make the second round of the playoffs next season, remember this moment. If they lose key free agents because negotiations dragged on too long, remember this moment. If the offense still hasn't fully adapted to maximize Caitlin Clark's abilities, remember this moment. Because focus matters. Priorities matter. And when you have a once-in-a-generation talent, everything else should take a backseat to building around that talent. The fact that it's not tells you something about where this organization's priorities really are. So was it worth it, Stephanie? Was calling a couple of college basketball games worth potentially compromising the most important offseason of your coaching career? We'll find out in about 2 months when the season starts and we see what this roster actually looks like. But right now, the optics are terrible. And in a league where perception drives narratives and narratives drive coverage, that matters more than people want to admit.